After Madam Koi Koi unleashed her wrath at the assembly hall, this foiled the spite and hatred FGGA students had for her, even though they still feared her. However, Fatima and her friends resolved they would stop at nothing until Madam Koi Koi was dismissed from FGGA. At the end of the school session, when students vacated for their holidays, Fatima reported to her cousin's uncle the incidents that followed suit after the previous investigation by the Education Ministry. She told the uncle how everyone, including the principal, feared Madam Koi Koi. The suspicion was that during the investigation, the principal had covered up for Madam Koi Koi, thereby leaving the delegates from the Education Ministry handicapped as there was nothing they could do. The man was furious. He wondered why a teacher would go to extreme lengths, all in the name of discipline. Headmistress Okoro was invited by the Education Ministry for questioning. The ministry threatened to dismiss her of her appointment if she didn't expose Madam Koi Koi's cruel practices. Headmistress Okoro, scared of losing her job, exposed all of Madam Koi Koi's cruel disciplinary practices. A decision was made. Madam Koi Koi was given an indefinite leave with the condition that she will return only after she had gone back to teachers' training and repeated the training, after which the Education Ministry will assess her and deem her fit to return back into the teaching profession. The day Madam Koi Koi was finally dismissed from Federal Government Girls Academy was a somber occasion. The sun rose on a campus that seemed to hold its breath, caught between relief and a lingering sense of unease. The once feared disciplinarian, Mrs. Okonkwo, was leaving after an investigation by the Ministry of Education, after the ministry uncovered damning evidence against her. Her cruel punishment had been too harsh, and the ministry's findings had led to her indefinite leave. As she packed her belongings, the atmosphere in the school was charged with a mixture of muted triumph and weary apprehension. Nneka and her friends exchanged glances of suppressed glee. The thought of no longer facing Madam Koi Koi's ruthless discipline was a dream come true. Despite the formal mourning and the somber air of farewell assembly, a subtle rebellious excitement lingered among the students. Madam Koi Koi's departure was marked by a subdued ceremony. The students forced to attend stood in neat rows, their faces marked with carefully controlled expressions. Headmistress Okoro spoke with restrained empathy, acknowledging the difficult decision and expressing hope for a positive future. As we bid farewell to Mrs. Okonkwo, Headmistress Okoro said, her tone deliberately neutral, "We hope that this transition brings about a renewed spirit of respect and kindness within our community." The crowd's reaction was polite, but the murmur of relief among the students was palpable. The thought of freedom from Madam Koi Koi's tyranny was like a weight lifted from their shoulders. Yet, as the final bell of the day rang, signaling the end of Madam Koi Koi's tenure, a cloud of disquiet loomed over the school. It wasn't just the end of her reign, it was the sudden, unexpected end of her life. As she drove away from the campus in her old black car, Madam Koi Koi was filled with fury and vowed she would not allow herself to be disgraced by a mere group of students. She decided she would teach the students an unforgettable lesson. Madam Koi Koi was furious. As Madam Koi Koi's car wound its way down the narrow road leading out of Enugu, in her fury, she kept stamping her feet on the accelerator, cursing every driver who tried to cross her path. With the car on full speed, Madam Koi Koi approached a sharp bend. The distant horn of what seemed like a bigger vehicle seemed to jolt her from her boiling rage into reality. But it was too late. That sharp bend wasn't meant for full speed. In the blink of an eye, the tranquil evening was shattered by the sound of screeching tires and a terrible crash. Madame Koi Koi's car skidded uncontrollably before slamming into a tree. Emergency services arrived swiftly, but it was too late. The cruel teacher had perished in a ghastly accident. Her once proud red heels, now a twisted wreckage alongside her mangled vehicle. The news of her death rippled through the school community like a chilling wind. A somber mood enveloped FGGE as the students gathered for the evening assembly, their faces etched with genuine sorrow. Despite the complex emotions they felt about Madame Koi Koi's departure, Headmistress Okoro announced the tragedy with solemn gravity, and the school observed a day of mourning. The ceremonial silence and respectful tributes did little to quell the undercurrent of mixed feelings. For the students, the initial shock quickly transformed into a guarded celebration. The oppressive weight of Madame Koi Koi's presence was gone. They reveled in their newfound freedom, though the shadows of their former fears lingered. However, it wasn't long before their relief was overshadowed by unsettling occurrences. As the days passed, the school's atmosphere grew increasingly unnerving. It started with inexplicable sounds, soft whispers, rustling footsteps, and the unmistakable click-clack of high heels echoing through the empty halls. The girls would catch fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure with glowing eyes, always accompanied by the chilling sound of those red heels. One night, when the school was cloaked in darkness and the dormitory was silent, a piercing scream shattered the stillness. It came from the common room, where a few students had gathered for a late-night study session. They had heard the clacking of heels approach, growing louder and more frantic, as if something or someone was searching for them. Nneka lay awake one night, the darkness pressing heavily against her. When the sound came again, it was a slow, deliberate click-clack, closer this time, coming from the direction of the dormitory's common room. She could feel the fear gripping her as her heart raced. She pulled her blanket up to her chin, trying to ignore the sound. In the common room, Fatima, Aisha, and their conspirators huddled together, their faces pale and drawn. The air was thick with the scent of incense they had burned to ward off evil, but it did little to dispel the creeping sense of dread. "We've gone too far," Aisha whispered, her voice trembling. "Something is wrong. This isn't right." When the lights flickered on, they saw nothing but an empty room, the eerie clicking sound fading into an unsettling silence. The students, now thoroughly terrified, whispered about the strange occurrences, their once courageous laughter replaced with fearful murmurs. Madame Koi Koi's death and the subsequent rumors of her ghastly return left an indelible mark on Federal Government Girls Academy. Her tragic demise was followed by strange and unsettling occurrences that further deepened the mystery surrounding her spirit. As days turned into weeks, the school community was abuzz with different accounts of the ghostly apparitions. Some students who had witnessed the eerie clicking of heels or felt a chilling presence in the dead of the night were convinced that Madame Koi Koi's spirit lingered, seeking retribution. They spoke in hushed tones about their late-night encounters with her spectral form, their tales filled with fear and unease. Conversely, others dismissed these stories as nothing more than collective hysteria and the power of suggestion. These skeptics, who refused to be intimidated by the supernatural claims, walked the hallways and ventured out at night with a sense of defiance, scoffing at the idea of a vengeful ghost. Gradually, an unspoken rule emerged among the students. No one walked alone at night, whether driven by genuine fear or a desire to confirm. The students formed tight-knit groups, always traveling together after dark. This precaution was not only about safety, but also a tacit acknowledgement of the unsettling reports circulating among them. The belief that only those who were scared or superstitious would be tormented by the ghost began to take hold. The notion persisted that Madame Koi Koi's spirit preyed upon the fearful, while the skeptics remained untouched by her haunting presence. It became a point of pride among the more skeptical students to brave the night alone, to show they were unafraid of the lingering ghost. Despite this, reports of Madame Koi Koi's ghostly presence continued to surface. Students claimed to hear the familiar click-clack of red heels echoing through the dormitory corridors, and some swore they saw fleeting shadows moving in the corners of their vision. The eerie sounds and sightings were sporadic, adding to the sense of unease and mystery surrounding the school. The once terrifying figure of Madame Koi Koi had become a legend, a story passed down among students. The tales of her ghostly hauntings were shared around campfires and whispered during sleepovers, each account adding to the mythology of the academic's dark past. To this day, the federal government Girls Academy remains shrouded in its own quiet enigma. The eerie clicking of heels is sometimes heard at night, and some students still report seeing shadows flitting through the hallways. Whether these reports are the result of lingering fear, genuine supernatural occurrences, or simply the echoes of an unsettling chapter in the school's history, remains an open question. The students, while no longer directly under Madame Koi Koi's rule, live with the awareness that her presence, whether real or imagined, continues to haunt the corridors of FGGA. The unspoken rule of never walking alone at night persists, a cautious reminder of the fear that once gripped the academy and the lingering echoes of a cruel teacher's legacy.